Hey guys, welcome back to the Lifestyle School podcast. If you're new here, welcome. This is a space where we talk about what it really takes to physically, emotionally, and mentally change your health and your life in a way that lasts. We don't chase extremes here. We don't rely on willpower, and we don't pretend that transformation is easy. And in today's episode, coming out this first week of February, I think the timing of this really matters because January, it's the month of fresh starts. It's the month of motivation, of vision boards, and big promises. And unfortunately, January is over. And February usually feels different, right? It's quieter, it's less exciting. The shine of the new year has kind of dulled a little bit. It's less exciting. And for a lot of people, it's where doubt starts to creep in about these changes that we set out to make in January. And if you set a New Year's resolution and you've already fallen off, if you've started strong and now you're feeling tired, discouraged, or just really frustrated, if you're questioning whether this is really worth it, I want you to know you're in the right spot and this episode is for you. And I want to say this clearly at the beginning. Giving up doesn't necessarily mean you're lazy. It doesn't mean you lack discipline. And it doesn't mean you're bad at change. Okay. Most people don't quit because they can't do the plan. They quit because no one warned them how uncomfortable change would be. Okay. Change is not comfortable. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how to sit with discomfort and pain as you change your lifestyle and your identity to become the healthiest version of yourself. And I think this is, a really important conversation that could not be more timely as we start the month of February. Okay. But before we get into it, guys, a quick disclaimer reminder. I'm not a medical doctor. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare practitioner before you make any major health and lifestyle changes, especially if you have significant health concerns. And then another quick reminder to let you know that my online supplement store is officially open. And if you've been wanting to buy high quality supplements you can actually trust, this is where to get them. Every product in my store is third party tested for quality and purity, which is unfortunately not something you're guaranteed when you're buying supplements off of, let's say, Amazon or grabbing them at your local CVS, grocery store, or even health food store. These are the same professional grade supplements and products that I use and recommend to my clients, and it's an easy way to support me and the Lifestyle School podcast. So if you're interested in purchasing supplements from me, you can head over to my website, www.hopeplatcoaching.com. In the top right corner, there is a tab that says store. And if you want to put in an order, you will need to use a code to set up an account. And that code is 104567. Again, that code is 104567. I also put that in the show notes for you guys. And if you want to know exactly where to start when it comes to supplements, go listen to episode 43, where I talk about my core 4 supplement recommendations and why they matter for metabolic health. Okay, guys, with that, let's jump into today's talk of a little motivational talk, maybe more than most, regarding January motivation versus the reality of February. Okay. And I think this hits harder for those people who live in really cold states. Thankfully, I now live in California where we don't deal with the extreme cold of February, the really early dark nights, and then just like the brown, like I feel like when it's Christmas time and even January, you get like the fresh white snow and it's beautiful, but I feel like things get a little bit more brown from all the sand that's put on the roads. It's just so dark for so long outside in February. And usually it's so cold. Being someone who has spent the majority of their life in Minnesota, I mean, February, I feel like is the time where you're dealing with negative, 20, 30, 40 degree weather, and it's just brutal. Okay. So January, I feel like is powered by motivation. February is powered by truth, right? If we let it be. In January, motivation kind of can carry us a little bit of the way. We're energized by the idea of, becoming someone new. But February comes and that motivation begins to fade. And that's what's left when that motivation fades is our habits, our identity, and our ability to stay present when things start to feel a little or a lot uncomfortable. Okay. This is the moment most people misinterpret. I want to say they think, oh, I've lost motivation. So something must be wrong with me or my plan, right? They think if I really wanted this, I wouldn't feel this hard. It's like 21 days to create a habit. That's a bunch of crap, right? That's not really how it works. Or they think, maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe this is just too hard. Life is happening. It's busy. But, um, you know, February isn't a sign when you get to February and you start to like feel these things. It's not a sign that you're failing. I would say February is really a test of whether or not you were prepared for reality after the shine and motivation of January fades, okay? Your body and brain are designed to keep you alive. Like we've talked about on previous episodes, we're wired for survival. Survival. Not we're not we're not wired to like help ourselves evolve into different people, if that makes sense. Familiar patterns feel really safe, even when they're harming us, right? That pattern of staying up late, eating in front of the TV before bed, it feels really safe, but it's actually harming us, right? And so when we change how we eat, or when we start fasting, or begin a strength training routine, or, even stop using food as a coping mechanism for stress, our nervous system doesn't necessarily interpret that as growth, right? Our nervous system doesn't know we're trying to be in a growth state. It interprets it as danger. The danger, doesn't show up logically. It more shows up as like a sensation. And I think you've probably felt that, right? You might feel hungrier than you expected. You might feel more emotional. This is a big one. You might feel tired or irritable or restless or anxious. Or you might suddenly want to quit everything and start fresh later, right? We're going to pause. This isn't working. We'll start something fresh next week, or we'll start over next week. And I want to be clear. I don't think this necessarily means that your plan isn't working. It might. You might need to reevaluate your plan, especially if you're on what I would consider a crappy plan and trying to calorie count or do something really extreme or too much too soon. But what this likely means is that your nervous system is adjusting to unfamiliar territory, because our nervous system doesn't like change. It's not like wired for us to have like personal growth. It's trying to keep us safe. It likes the consistent. It likes the predictable, right? And we've been taught that discomfort means something is wrong. But that is not always the case. Discomfort is often just information. Okay. And so we have to be able to sort through that. If it's your body saying this discomfort might be like your body saying this is new, or your brain might be saying, oh, this isn't familiar. This isn't what we usually do. Or it could be your nervous system saying, I don't have a map for this yet. I don't quite know how to navigate this. And to be clear, that doesn't mean that you're unsafe. It means that you're learning something new. And that is central to lifestyle change, right? To these new habits and new structures that you're trying to implement into your life to become the healthiest version of yourself. And the problem isn't discomfort itself. The problem comes with how quickly we try to escape that discomfort, right? Because, I think we think, oh, something's wrong. I'm uncomfortable. But I think we have to like pause and say, well, why am I uncomfortable? What am I actually feeling in this moment? I have many clients who've dealt with this, but they find themselves, you know, doing well on their plan, and then they'll like wake up and they find that they're searching through their cupboards in their kitchen for something to eat when they realize they're not even hungry, right? But they're searching and they're looking for something, and um I always tell them, like, let's take a pause, step back and say, well, what do we really need in this moment? Like, let's go sit down and have some reflection time of, why was I looking for food? How do I actually feel right now? And maybe it's they feel anxious, or maybe they feel lonely, or maybe they're stressed. And it's like, okay, well, if I feel anxious, what do I actually need to calm down, right? It's that signal, and we got to, excuse me, tune into that signal to figure out, like, what is this discomfort? What is it trying to tell me? And usually doesn't mean, we need to like fall off the bandwagon with our food goals or our plan. Usually it's like we need something else. We need connection with another human. We need to rest. We're really tired. Maybe it means we need to find alternate ways to deal with our stress that isn't just eating food, which ultimately I think adds to the stress because we feel bad afterward, right? And so um I think that's a big thing about discomfort, is understanding the signal that it's sending us. But then also, along with this, is we feel discomfort when we try to change, but also lifestyle change isn't just behavioral, it's personal. And I think this is where it gets really tricky for people. And this goes back to identity, which we talked a lot about in the episode called The Shedding, where we talk about like versions of yourself that you have to shed to become the new version of yourself, who is the healthiest, fittest, person that you want to be, who has the health that you want, right? Lifestyle change isn't just behavioral, it's personal. And you're not just changing what you eat, you're changing how you see yourself. And there's always an awkward and uncomfortable in between phase when it comes to how we see ourselves and changing that. You don't fully identify with the old version of yourself anymore, but the new version doesn't feel natural quite yet. So you're kind of like in this in between that feels uncomfortable, right? You, in some ways, feel out of place in your own life because, um, there's things that you're involved in and that you do that maybe aren't quite in line with this new version of yourself. But then you also have these things that are going really great and that you feel really good about. And, there's this like internal struggle. And I think it's normal but uncomfortable to feel out of place in your own life a little bit as you go through this process of change. But I think a lot of people get to this point and they start to panic a little bit, because we want certainty, right? We love certainty, but that's not real life. There's few things we can be certain of in life. We want reassurance, right? And we want proof that we're doing it right. And that stuff doesn't always just show up. But um identity change doesn't, give these things to you um up front, but what it does is it asks you to stay anyway, right? So we have to be okay with sitting in the discomfort of this process of change from this old version of ourselves to our new version of ourselves, and that bridge that we have to cross to totally get to the new version of ourselves. You imagine it as a standing in the middle of a bridge, right? And you got stuff from both sides pulling you, and the goal is to get to the other side, but it's going to be uncomfortable along the way. But that's okay, because discomfort isn't bad. And we need to stop seeing it this way. And, I want to differentiate something. And, I think it's important to separate in this process when it comes to discomfort and pain on our journey to being like our healthiest self. Um, Specifically between pain and suffering. Okay. Pain is unavoidable when you change. I'm just going to say that again for the people in the back. Pain is unavoidable when you change. Like, there's going to be parts of the process of change that are going to be painful, whether that's, you know, giving up um sugar, or, really reducing that, and your relationship with sugar or carbs, or just ultra processed food in general. There's going to be the pain of like dopamine withdrawal, right? Of disconnecting that from your stress mechanisms, right? It's going to be painful, but suffering is optional when it comes to this process. So here's what is really going to let me give you some examples. Pain might look like hunger during a fasting window. Like, I'll be real, that can be painful when you're working on your fasting muscle. If you've never gone more than 2 hours without eating, like myself, prior to working on my metabolic health, hunger during a fasting window can occasionally, or sometimes a lot, until you get good at it and lower your insulin so you can actually get stored fat, can feel a little bit painful. Okay. Muscle soreness after strength training legitimately can feel painful when you're like lowering yourself onto the toilet seat after your first leg day and you're like, I won't be able to get up, or you're trying to go downstairs and you're going like sideways. That is painful, right? Physical pain. I would say saying no to foods that once like really soothed us can feel emotionally painful. Um, Also, and this is a big one, feelings that, or emotions that we used to numb with food, that we're now confronted with because we're no longer indulging in those foods, they can feel painful. And the difference, though, is suffering is the story layered on top of these painful things that we are feeling, which I think this is a really, really important note. So tune in here. So suffering is the story layered on top of these, quote unquote, painful things that we experience, whether it's physical or emotional, mental. And it's, saying things like, this shouldn't feel this hard. That's layering suffering on top, or saying something like, something must be wrong that I feel hungry during this fasting window. Or, saying like, I'm not cut out for this. These are how, like, the story that we tell ourselves in our head about this, temporary pain that we're feeling in the process of change is and it can be an opportunity to layer suffering on top of it. And that is the last thing that we want to do, right? The sensation itself is often tolerable. Um, it's the meaning that we assign to it that makes us want to quit. And we got to be really, really, really careful about the conversation we're allowing ourselves to have in our head. We need to be focusing on gratitude, on joy, on our glass being half full, and cheering ourselves on, and not allowing ourselves to go down this like suffering spiral as we experience the pain of change and the discomfort of change. And another piece of this is willpower when it comes to change. I'm sure, it's February. You've probably figured this out, but willpower fails us long term all the time, every time. Willpower is never going to get you to cross the finish line for, what we're looking at, which is long-term health. Here at Lifestyle School, we're not about like a 30-day challenge or doing something for 8 or 10 weeks. Like, we want to help you create a life that is changed, not just 30 days from now, not just 6 months from now, but like years and years and years, decades from now. Like, the things that hopefully you're learning are going to change the trajectory of your life all the way to the end of your life, right? That is my goal. And willpower is unreliable. Let me tell you, not to brag, but I feel like I'm someone who has a pretty decent amount of willpower. But I can tell you, oh man, willpower is unreliable. And so if you're someone who feels like you just naturally have a smaller willpower tank, you're right there with me. We're all in this same boat where willpower is not reliable. It fluctuates with our sleep, right? Bad night of sleep. Hello, where's the willpower? Nowhere in sight. A stressful day happens. Oh, out the window. Willpower is non-existent. Hormones can make our willpower disappear as well as our emotions. And I want to be, clear that people who succeed, they don't rely on willpower. But one thing that they do, it's of many things, one of many things is they build a discomfort tolerance. We got to be okay being uncomfortable because when you stop relying on willpower, you start to expect resistance, like the resistance to change. You just assume that it's going to feel hard sometimes, and that's okay. Like, that's just a big mindset shift of like, this is going to be hard sometimes, but I'm okay with that. Like, this is what I'm signing myself up for, right? It's about managing your expectations. And these people also who build up this discomfort tolerance, they don't wait to feel ready or motivated, right? Because they realize like that day might literally never come. What the people who don't rely on willpower but see success, they've learned how to stay present in the hard moments instead of running from them. And that's a huge um shift that has to happen if you want to have success through February. And I'm going to be real that it's a skill. It's not a personality trait, okay? It is a skill that has to be practiced and learned. It's a muscle that you build, just like with anything else. I would say very few people are just good at it from the get-go. Like, we have to um build our tolerance for discomfort, and we have to really be intentional about the conversation we're allowing ourselves to have in our head, and we have to expect that it's going to be hard and that we're going to create structures and systems in our life that allow us to do it anyway when willpower is non-existent. And that's a huge focus of what I teach in my course, Lifestyle School for Weight Loss. And, sitting with discomfort doesn't mean forcing ourselves through misery, right? But what it does mean is it means pausing, taking a pause. It means noticing a craving without immediately like surrendering to it. It means allowing hunger to rise and fall without panicking, or it could look like feeling emotional discomfort and allowing yourself to sit with that and to kind of explore it without numbing it with, whatever it is you used to do, likely food, right? And sometimes sitting with discomfort looks like waiting 10 more minutes, like setting a timer on your phone and just being like, I found myself searching the cupboards for something, but I'm not sure what I'm feeling or what's going on. If you're like me, I have gone through a lot of change on my health journey of reconnecting with myself and my needs and my emotions, which I think is a really important part. I was emotionally very disconnected from myself for, I think, the majority of my life. I don't know exactly why. I have some ideas, but reconnecting with myself, my needs, my emotions has been a big part of the process. But sometimes it's like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what I need. And so putting that pause on for 10 minutes and being like, okay, I'm just going to 10 minutes would be a long time for me. I have 3 young kids at home. Even 5 minutes of being like, okay, like, what do I feel right now? What do I need? What's actually going to help me? Right. That can be huge. Sometimes it looks like taking in breath and just like inhale, exhale, you know, taking a second instead of just automatically quitting and just popping something in your mouth, right? Sometimes it looks like doing absolutely nothing and just letting that urge pass because you realize it for what it is, right? And this is the moment where I think change actually happens for people. Um, Not when things are necessarily easy. I think the most growth happens for us when we're uncomfortable. Discomfort accelerates growth, where I think ease and comfortability, there we go, I said it. I think a lot of times leads to us being stagnant. Okay. But when you choose not to escape the discomfort or the temporary pain that comes with change, that's really where things start to change in a really meaningful way. And I've talked about this before on previous podcasts, but there is a grief of letting go and becoming a healthier version of yourself does require loss. Okay. And this might seem small to you, but it might also seem big, right? You may grieve the foods that were your comfort foods, right? You might grieve old routines and habit patterns that you were really attached to. You might grieve the change in relationships that come with growth, and becoming a healthier version of yourself, or people pleasing. Um, or you might grieve like being that version of yourself that never rocked the boat, right? Or never had needs or made themselves or being someone who made their needs known. And if you're feeling grief like as you're like in the midst of this change, it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It actually means that you're shedding that old identity that once protected you, and that shedding hurts. But you can't become this new version of yourself, this healthy version of yourself, without letting go of the old self. Okay. And so if you find yourself this first week of February feeling like quitting would be a relief, um, I will say this: quitting maybe feels good initially, because the hunger stops for those old foods, the discomfort fades, the internal pressure lifts, but that relief is temporary. Okay. I promise you, a couple weeks is going to go by and it's going to be replaced with frustration, with self doubt, and a desire for another restart. Okay. And staying feels hard in the moment, but it builds something deeper and stronger. And what that is self trust. And self trust is the foundation of sustainable change. Every time you show up to do something that you told yourself you were going to do, and you do it even when you're not feeling like it, you are building self trust and trust in yourself and your ability to follow through on what you commit to. That is a huge deal. So, as we move into February, let's redefine what success in February looks like, because I think um, having a healthy um, idea of what success looks like is also a super important part of this process. Success is not perfection. Like, I hate it when people expect themselves to be perfect, because we're not robots. We're human, we're complex. We are going to mess up. We're not going to do anything perfect. And I think having that expectation sets us up for failure. So success isn't perfection. Success doesn't necessarily look like motivation, kind of like we talked about. Like, you're not going to feel motivated. It's going to feel hard sometimes, and that's okay. And we should expect that, right? Um, Success isn't necessarily loving the process. You might be like, oh, this stinks. I want to give up. This is annoying. Maybe you need to call a friend and rant, but then a friend who's going to be like, yes, but you're worth the change, right? And you're not going to have to love this process every step of the way. But if you keep going, it's going to get easier, right? Success is staying when it's uncomfortable. Okay. This is what success looks like. Success looks like continuing even when progress feels slow, right? Sometimes we've got quick progress that happens, but sometimes it's slow. And that's okay, because we're doing all the things that we set out to do. We're building that self confidence. And, I will say this: everyone's body is different. And sometimes there's way more progress happening internally in your physiology. And it just hasn't showed up externally yet. Okay. If you're doing these good foundational things for your health, you are making progress, even if externally it looks or feels slow. And success um, is not quitting just because it's hard. Okay. If you're feeling like it's really hard and you're just keeping going, that is success. And I will say this: February is where habits are forged, okay? Because we're out of shiny, motivated January. Um, and it's not because it's inspiring. in February, but it's because it's like really honest, like honest change happens in February. And the people who stick with it in February are going to be much more likely to stick with March, April, May, and, kind of have a moment 6 months from now and being like, oh, wow, I have come a really long way, right? Because you just keep showing up, whether you feel like it, whether you don't, whether it feels good, whether it feels uncomfortable, whether it's a little bit painful, you just keep showing up. And so I'll close with this. If you're listening to this and thinking about giving up, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not broken. Like, your body isn't broken if this is feeling really hard. And I think it's easy to think of ourselves as messed up or broken or, unable to do anything. That's not the case. You're not behind. If you haven't seen the progress that you want, you're not behind. Maybe you need to tweak your plan. I'd love to help you get a better plan if your plan isn't a good one, but you're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be, and you're not failing. If you're showing up, even just a little bit at this point, you're not failing. You are making steps towards your goal, and one little step forward every day is better than 10 steps backwards, right? And I want you to see yourself, just picture yourself for a second. You are standing at the doorway of real change. Okay. This is a pivotal moment for you. Discomfort is not a sign to stop. It's a sign that you're becoming someone new. So that should really excite you. And if you want structure, support, and guidance through that phase, I would love to support you, whether that's you just reaching out via email at hopeplatcoaching@gmail.com or via social media. Or if that looks like something more of doing my Lifestyle School for Weight Loss course or working with me one-on-one in my 8-week personalized coaching program, I would love to encourage you and help you take that step to the other side of the doorway. Because I believe in you and I believe in this process, and I really want to see people achieve their best health. I want them to feel great about themselves. I want them to have energy, and I want them to be able to live, the life that they have always envisioned for themselves, not one of pain, of tiredness, fatigue, and disability and disease, right? I want so much more for you than that. So here is a challenge for you this week. When discomfort shows up, don't run from it. Okay. Just sit with it for a second, breathe through it, evaluate it, or just let it pass. Because the strongest and healthiest version of you is built right there inside of that discomfort. So guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, leave a review, share it with a friend. It's the best way to get the news out that this podcast even exists. So with that, guys, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for supporting the show. We will see you next time on the Lifestyle School podcast.